Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
We'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome in to the Wacky Wednesday version of the Arrowhead Addict podcast. No Adam Best, so way less wacky. I'm still here, Sterling Holmes, and joined by my dude, Daniel Harms. You can follow him on the X at InHarmsWay19. Check out all of his great work at RGR Football. Harms, how are you?
You know, it feels like we're in a little bit of a lull right now with the Chiefs not in St. Joe anymore. We're not getting like necessary camp updates, and it's like we're getting really close to football now. So I'm starting to be getting back into the regular season flow of things. I'm feeling good. I know everyone else is busy, so no, I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
Good. I'm antsy. I'm antsy for football season, where we're so damn close. Preseason game 3 means about nothing for 86 dudes of the 90, right? There's like 4 guys that this really affects. And we're going to talk about those 4 dudes. We'll talk about the cornerback room in more detail as well. I'm just excited for Kansas City, though, in a nutshell. The Royals are playing good baseball. Mizzou, KU, K-State, all projected to have very nice years in college football. And, of course, the Chiefs going for a three-peat. And, of course, just the perpetual barbecue aroma that reigns supreme throughout Kansas City. I'm loving where things are at right now. Before we get into everything, I want to give a shout-out to Mint Mobile. Because with big wireless providers, what you see isn't what you get. The price magically skyrockets somewhere in between the store and your first bill. With Mint Mobile, you won't have to worry about that. With Mint Mobile, when they say $15 a month, they mean it. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/arrowhead. That's mintmobile.com/arrowhead. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/arrowhead. $45 upfront payment required. That's equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Slower speeds above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions may apply. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, Harms. Talked about it a little bit yesterday with Briscoe, but I want to get into it with a little more detail here with you. Spagnuolo has talked about no one stepping up and taking that CB2 role. Now, I don't think it means there's a bunch of CB5s or, oh my gosh, doom and gloom. The Chiefs are screwed in the secondary. But I do think it's a little bit of, okay, the Chiefs have a lot of CB3s. Okay, they have a lot of dudes that they like. Not a lot of dudes they love. Is that the feeling that you're getting as well?
It's funny. I was just on the Monday night Q&A, and I was talking with Ryan about how this could just be a rotation of cornerbacks. Because last year in camp, both Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson, the same things were being said. It was a competition then, and no one was taking it. That's why Najee Johnson was being talked about as a starter in the defense last year. And here we are. It's the same exact thing. You have the same players that there's a reason they were day 3 picks is, yeah, they fit into what you want to do for them specifically, but there isn't a ton of upside for them. Athletically, sure, but schematically, there's some limitations for all of these players. And when Najee Johnson's being thrown out there with Trent McDuffie and Joshua Williams in the absence of Jalen Watson, you're not seeing a ton of difference. It's all about the same. So it would not shock me in the slightest if all of these players, all 4 of these cornerbacks, play at different times throughout this season. And that's the situation you don't really want to be in, because you definitely want to have maybe one guy rotate out in and out depending on situation. So Joshua Williams has been the number 1 guy that's taken those snaps largely because of, no, thank you, sweetie. that he's had to. He's just had to take him. And with Jalen Watson, you can say hi to my daughter.
Hey, Avery. I hope all is well.
All right, sweetie. Go eat your
I'm
dinner.
proud of you, Avery. You've done a phenomenal job. Bye. I'll see you, Avery.
Okay. All right. So I think we are understanding that Joshua Williams at least is going to be out there first, because with with Watson's injury and Najee Johnson coming off of an injury, you're not going to see the level of play that you probably want to. So he's going to get the first crack at it. But I think you're right that this could be just a lot of guys that end up in a rotation and you're not having someone really stand out, which can be a problem for the Chiefs.
Yeah, and what's been interesting is they've all been injured, and no one has shown during the injury to these other guys the ability to step up and take this job. I think that's what Spags is alluding to more than anything. I think the main culprit of this is Joshua Williams. He has been the healthiest until the past, 2 days now with the hamstring injury, but he had the best opportunity to step up and take this role. He has not, whilst Watson, obviously recovering from the torn labrum, the shoulder injury. Kelvin Joseph, who was getting his name dropped perpetually early on, now he is somewhat, he's got injured and it's almost gone by the wayside. Najee Johnson obviously has been injured as well at some points. One name that I thought was interesting early, I liked him last year, and it's kind of, again, going by the wayside, is Echo Boydo. Echo Boydo, I've not heard his name thrown around as much. Little surprising there. But again, I don't think this is panic mode. I just think it's not ideal. I know folks will talk about, well, how do you let L'Jarius Sneed walk? For those who might not understand, the return for L'Jarius Sneed, it's all based on what his future contract was, right? The Chiefs were not going to be able to afford to keep L'Jarius Sneed. Everyone in the NFL knew this. Every team was trading for basically L'Jarius on the new contract. So you're trading the third rounder to then turn around and pay him as one of the higher paid cornerbacks in the NFL. It wasn't financially feasible for Kansas City to do that. It's partially why the salary cap era is supposed to be so great for the NFL. It creates parity. That's the whole NFL structure, is they want parity. The Chiefs have just been so dominant, and before them, the Patriots, they've bucked the trend because they're so good at drafting and developing, right? That's why the Chiefs have won back-to-back Super Bowls. It's not just because of L'Jarius, but he was also that fourth-round guy that turned into a stud. He turned into what should have been an all-pro. So the Chiefs right now are trying to do the same thing with Williams, with Watson, with Echo Boydo, with Keith Taylor, which you can get to him if you want to talk about him. He's been playing a ton of ball. It's just, it's intriguing of how they're going to fill this void.
Yeah, I think the Keith Taylor stuff's a little smoke, just because they've got three guys that have played in the defense a little bit longer and are slated ahead of him. And if I'm looking at this cornerback room as a whole, right now, at least, it looks like Shamari Connor is also listed as a cornerback, which does change the math on some of your safety versus cornerback stuff, which I'm going to get to here in a little bit. But I think Keith Taylor's been fine, but he's not someone that's going to, again, be better than Joshua Williams or be better than Jalen Watson has been. Those guys have played in the NFL. They have experience in the system, and they know what's asked of them. The problem for me is I'm looking at these guys, and I'm thinking on nickel dime sets. You have Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson on the outside with Trent McDuffie in the slot. If that's how they want to use Trent McDuffie, that's probably going to be what we see, right? I don't know about you, but Shamari Connor has done nothing to really show to me that he's a nickel defender against smaller receivers. Big nickel defender? Sure. He's been very good against tight ends and bigger players. But if you ask him to one-on-one smaller, quicker guys, he's getting left in the dust. And then on top of it, he's been a liability as a tackler. If he falls behind, he's more diving at ankles and stuff because he's not the best tackler. He hasn't been. He wasn't at Virginia Tech, and he wasn't really last year, and he hasn't been in the preseason. He had 3 or 4 missed tackles in this preseason game last Saturday. So all of that being said, is there is a player on this roster that most people don't know, that have now heard his name a couple of times. He's a rookie. Christian Roland Wallace is a name to familiarize yourself with, because this is the nickel defender that I think not only makes the roster, but gives them the flexibility to take Trent McDuffie and keep him on the outside for some of those nickel and dime sets to give the actual rotation, because yes, he's a bit thinner, he's physical, he's sticky, he plays the game the right way, he wraps up and he tackles, he's not afraid to get his nose dirty in the run game. That's what the Chiefs want. That's what they want from all their players. So the fact that he can play a little bit of safety for you and have the versatility that we've seen in Kansas City, with going back to the early days with the name, I just had it and escaped my name, my mind. But he's
how early?
It was the first Super Bowl where he went and became a Washington Commander.
Andrew Wild, offense or defense? Kendall Fuller.
Defense. Kendall Fuller. That's who it is. That's who it was. That's the kind of flexibility we were talking about, who actually, he's made a very good career for himself. I think he's still in the league. So he's still playing for pretty good football for whoever it is that he's at, whatever team he's on right now. But that's the kind of versatility that they want. Someone that can play a little bit of safety, but also come down and cover receivers in the slot. So he's a player that is got a lot on his plate for this game. He's been very good the first 2 games already. And I think that he can really give them that dynamic piece to keep McDuffie on the outside if they're having problems with maybe Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams being both on the outside at the same time.
It's really intriguing. Again, part of it's because Chamari Connor has not looked good in the slot so far this year. Again, yeah, he was great last year. So what do the Chiefs value more? What we saw from him last season, or do you value preseason OTAs, training camp? We'll see what the Chiefs decide. But you're right. Chamari's not looked great, especially against those shiftier slot corners. Slot receivers. Some of the angles he's taken has not been ideal, to put it mildly. You're right. That's almost thrown a wrench, if you will, into the situation here. Another name, I guess 2 names I've not heard much of. Don't know your thoughts. Nick Jones, haven't heard him. Early on, seemed like he was the backup slot corner. Seemingly no. And then Kamal Hadden, the 6th rounder from Tennessee. I was pretty intrigued by, again, the size, the potential, some of the underlying numbers he actually put up at Tennessee as a corner, right? But I have not heard his name at all.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting for the Chiefs with Kamal Hadden, because he was an outside corner, and that's where he did most of his really good football. He's a physical guy who seemingly fits what you want Josh Williams to be, right? That outside guy that will carry vertical, doesn't have to travel, he'll be physical, and he can play man coverage pretty well. But they've been playing him in the slot. He's been a slot corner for the Chiefs, and he's been better than Nick Jones. Nick Jones has not done anything to prove himself to make this roster. And I think the road is really long for Kamal Hadden, but I mean, he had a handful, 5, 6, or 7 snaps in the slot in this past game. It was well into the 4th quarter at that time, but he looked far more comfortable. And one of the things that really stuck out to me with Hadden was that he was communicating with all the other guys out there. So there's a play that sticks in my head. It was a busted coverage over the middle field to the left-hand hash, where the Lions motioned into a bunch formation to the close side of the field. Hadden's there. He comes down and he signals to the I believe it was Gillespie. Ooh.
Yeah, former
Gillespie,
Tiger baby.
Yeah, Gillespie, who was playing like the slot but safety coming down. He signals to him that he's got to switch over and change off. And that did not happen. So there was a broken coverage over the middle of the field. And then at the end of the play, you see Keith Joseph, or sorry, not Keith Joseph. There's so many corners and KKs on the team. Kelvin Joseph come over and kind of tap Gillespie on the shoulder and say, look, that has to be you. And so the fact that he's communicating as a rookie, even though it's against 4th, 5th, and 3rd string players, shows that there's at least growth there. And he's able to understand his role in this system as he's coming down, and his responsibilities are changing based on the offensive formation. So maybe he doesn't make the roster now, but I think you can do enough to keep him on the practice squad that maybe next year you get a pretty good look at him. But I would say at this point that Nick Jones is definitely not going to be on the roster, and you pretty much could get him on the practice squad. No one's going to be really sniffing around there. But Hadden intrigues me specifically because he's been playing a lot of slot, and that wasn't necessarily where I expected him to be.
Braden asks, do they add a veteran cornerback? Says, I'd still rather add a vet defensive end, but it still feels like Casey can make a move even if they rotate heavily.
You know, I don't know about you, but right now they're probably going to have to wait until cut down day to add somebody, right? There's not really the last guy out there I think you would feel comfortable enough to bring in and say you can start was Stephon Gilmore. And I think Xavier Howard is someone that, you know, his career has taken a downturn, injuries. He hasn't really done enough to be able to say that he could play better than Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson, given what we've seen to this point in the last few years for him. So I know they want to bring in someone to be a cornerback too. I do think that the comfort in the Chiefs system is going to be overridden by the staff at this point if it's not someone like Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I think the money for Gilmore was a little too expensive for the Chiefs' taste. Veteran-wise, I don't know who would be better than the Williams-Watson that's currently been in the system for Kansas City a couple of years now. Again, I think sometimes the name almost outweighs the current production of some players. Cornerback's one of those positions, too, specifically where that drop-off is fairly steep. Right, it is impressive what Gilmore's doing till his age, but typically you start hitting the late 20s, all of a sudden it's, oh man, that does not look good. You look like a late 20s cornerback. It's almost like running backs to an extent where there's a certain age drop off and it hits you extremely hard. Another one I wanted to get to from getting a three-peat says, guys, I've been a big FAU supporter, but if he does not produce this week, are we questioning his role, or do they still have time to coach him up? Harms, what do you think?
Really quickly, going back just before I answer this question, we can put a lot of trust in Dave Merritt and Spags. Like, they've done a fantastic job. So, like, I don't want to put, like you said earlier, it's not doom and gloom at the cornerback position. They still got excellent coaches to get these guys in the right position to succeed. So, when it comes to Felix, yes, Avery.
It's almost 5:30.
Okay, well, I did say at 5:30, right? So you can do that.
It's almost Avery's turn. It's almost Avery's
sweetie.
turn.
You still have 15 minutes. Okay.
I think she might have a secret to tell you. Oh, dang. I thought she had the secret to the CB2 room or the FAU question. Thought it was. She might.
She's been watching with me, so she might have an FAU question. It wouldn't shock me in the slightest at this point with her starting flag football and everything. So FAU, guys, is not getting sacks. It's true. He's not getting sacks in the preseason. He's generating quite a lot of pressure. And I know that he's not going to pop for the wins that you want for the numbers in terms of pass rush win rate. That's not something we always really want to take into full context anyway, because there's a lot of things that happen outside of the realm of how fast do you win on this rep and get to the quarterback that you have to take into consideration. So this past game specifically for FAU, he looked gassed in the second quarter, just absolutely gassed. A combination of the heat, playing more snaps than he has since college, I think took it out of him, which is not an excuse. It's not. I think it's just a fact. He's just got to get to the point where he's playing more. He's conditioned better. That's kind of what this is for. I think the biggest reason that he's playing all this football in the preseason is to try to get him conditioned so he's better prepared for the regular season. That's something we kind of saw last year too, when he was forced to play early and he wasn't as even good with his hands as he is now. It was hard for him to really get there. So that's the first thing that I wanted to point out. And the second thing is that he's gotten a lot better with his physical strength. The physical tools are much better. I think he stands up better against tackles. He's able to set the edge a little bit harder than he did last year. The number one thing for him is his hands are still quite slow. And I know I just saw a video with Tamba talking about jiu-jitsu and trying to train with him and George about using your hands a bit better. For Felix, there's still a lot going on in his head. He's got so much in terms of different pass rush moves, and we've seen pretty much all of them going back to the first preseason game where he was trying out a ton, and he was getting a lot of wins in that football game. But I think that he's doing a very good job of trying out a lot of different stuff. He's just not getting to the counters quick enough. That's the big thing that I'm seeing right now, is that he's not able to get his hands from one position to the arm over and getting through that point. Like, so he's still figuring that out, the next step into that. So I understand the frustration with him not being a big producing player right now. It is kind of unfortunate that he wasn't a first round pick on my board. He was a second round player, a lot of talent, but still very, very raw. You'd want to see a little bit more out of him at this point. But I mean, you look around it, the David Ojabos, the Adafe Owes, the guys that are high-end athletes and raw players, they have not produced, and some of them have been hurt to this point in their careers. So it might take a little bit longer. I'm not really ready to just, jump ship on it yet, but it's starting to get to the point that after this year, if you don't see any more improvement, it's pretty much a wasted pick at this point.
Yeah, Briscoe and I basically gave him until Amenahu comes back. He doesn't have to be great. I just want to see something. I want to see more than one play.
Yeah.
I want to see more. It was great. That Super Bowl play was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I need more than one play. And so he has time with Amenahu out. Him, Dana most likely will probably rotate off. I could see, first and second down, Mike Dana, third down. Here comes FAU, right? Because FAU right now is not looking good in the run game. He's not. So maybe him focusing on one thing can help elevate his career, give him some confidence, if you will. That's what I want to see, and I'm giving him until Amenahu comes back because I still think he's 8 weeks, right? 8 games away. So he's got to have a season to do it. Again, don't want to label it bust. Think it's unfair. But it's questionable. It's like I want to see. At some point, you got to see it. We knew it last year was a red shirt. So I'm giving him a solid 8 weeks. That seems fair. I'm a generous man here, Holmes. I'm a generous man. I do want to get into the linebacker talk here because we'll get to special teams in a moment, just as far as the overarching thought process on special teams and how it affects the 53-man. But the one position that I think special teams affects is linebackers. Like, I think the Chiefs might keep 6 linebackers. I think they might keep Cochran, Bolton Drew, Leo Chenal. I think they're going to keep Cam Jacobs or Cam Jones and Curtis Jacobs. Like, I think they keep 6. Maybe I'm crazy, but they like Cam Jones. Curtis Jacobs is flashed, right? I think both of those two guys could be used on special teams. It would make huge impacts on special teams, especially with the way the current roster is constructed, the new rules. Those two guys, I think, have an even bigger role than they would have had last year. Oh, and by the way, the Chiefs had 6 linebackers heading into the season last year. So 6 is not out of the realm of possibility. What do you think?
I don't necessarily disagree, but I will say when it comes down to the numbers, I think 6 will be tough with maybe having to lean towards 7 wide receivers with this injury to Hollywood Brown, where he's not going on IR. At least that's not the plan right now. We don't really know what's going to happen there. So you might have to keep 7. Offensive line depth doesn't look great. Doesn't look very good for the backups there. You might have to keep more just in case. And also you got injuries on the offensive line. So you might have to keep an extra just to get through that point. So I think I think Cochran's 100% locked in for his, not just his special teams role, but he's been out there operating in the Nick Bolton, quote unquote, Nick Bolton role. So that would be 100% you're on the roster. Cam Jones has been interesting to me because he flashed a ton in the Week 18 game against the Los Angeles Chargers. He felt like he was all over the field. For whatever reason, I don't get that feeling this year. I know it's just preseason, but it doesn't look the same. Now, obviously, he did get hurt, and that's why he wasn't active for the playoff run. So there is that to consider, but it just looks a little slow to me. So I'm trying to figure out how that's going to work because I thought he would be the guy that takes some of the Willie Gay position off of the Chiefs' plate because of what he was able to do. So I'm trying to figure out if he's going to make the roster right now, but special teams, you're probably right with Cam Jones. Makes sense. The interesting to me for this game specifically on Thursday is Curtis Jacobs, who didn't do much in game 1, but he finally started to, I think, process a little bit better in the second preseason game where you again saw him flash a couple of times. And not just getting in the backfield on that the run stop there, but I think funneling and getting to the right spots in the run game. So seeing, okay, this play is going out here. If he's trying to get to the outside, I'm going to flash to the outside, get on a block, but not make it so that offensive lineman swallows me up. I'm going to set the edge there. I'm going to flash to the outside and try to get that running back to go back inside to where my help is. So I think he was understanding everything was starting to come through a little bit quicker for him, and that's what you want to see from game 1 to game 2. And this game is going to be all about him. And I think both him and Cam Jones have a ton to prove in this last preseason game where they can be on the field at the same time again, and just play maybe alternating roles with each other in terms of Will and middle linebacker, just to get a better feel for them. Because I think that Curtis Jacobs has that speed that you want. I think he showed that he's got some legitimate click and close when he sees that play is coming. He can get downhill very, very quickly. So the special team stuff, absolutely for both of these guys. I'm trying to point on the roster where you can actually put them in the game and feel comfortable with that, because I'm still hesitant with putting Cochran into a game, as we saw last year in the Green Bay game. It was not very pretty to watch. So I'm just trying to see where they're going to transition to, because I think Jacobs has a lot of upside. So he's very intriguing to me right now.
Question from Kills954 says, how come we couldn't pay Snead or any number of receivers, but other teams can pay 2 top receivers? I think losing Snead is going to rear its ugly head. Hopefully I'm wrong. The reason being, again, it's how the cap is constructed. It's a salary cap era. It's trying to garner parity. That's why the NFL, teams that can be bad, in 2 years later, they can turn things around, a la the Houston Texans, right? The Chiefs can't do that because they're paying Chris Jones top money, Patrick Mahomes top money. I don't care what people say. Yes, I understand. It's a discount. It's still top of the line up there money. It's not a rookie contract for a quarterback, right? They're paying Travis Kelce the most of any tight end position. They're paying Joe Thuney a lot of money for a left guard. They're paying Justin Reed a good chunk of change to play safety. They're paying Jawan Taylor, which is why I questioned that move from the get-go when they brought Jawan Taylor in. If anyone wants to pull the tape, big reason why. Stuff like this. Drew Tranquil, not on a rookie contract. Like, these are the reasons why the Chiefs aren't able to go out and pay Tyreek Hill or go out and be in the Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb. When people are like, well, could the Chiefs trade for CeeDee Lamb? No, because they can't afford to extend him. That's the difference here. What it comes down to is the Chiefs don't have a high-priced corner yet. I think Trey McDuffie bucks the trend. They don't have a high-priced wide receiver. And part of the thought process is because, one, Mahomes can elevate wide receivers. He can't elevate the defense, right? It's one of those situations where the Chiefs haven't valued that whilst they have valued other positions like right tackle, like left guard, like safety, and to an extent like Drew Tranquil and defensive tackle with Chris Jones. It's just how it's made. I always break it down to those, those $15, those things you'll see on Twitter or Instagram where it's like you have $15 to spend. They're on a scale of $1, $2, $3, $4, $5. You can have 2 of those guys. And then it's the $3 and then 2 ones. That's kind of how the Chiefs operate. They have Mahomes. They have Chris Jones. How the Miami Dolphins operate. They have Jalen Waddle. They have Tyreek Hill. Eventually, it's going to be Tua Tagovailoa getting up on that. But then you look at the Dolphins. Their defense is atrocious. They spent all their money offensively. It's why they lost Christian Wilkins. So it's just how the NFL is constructed. The Chiefs have tried to go a more balanced route, if you will, instead of sinking a ton of money into a specific position, specific player. I think wide receiver, again, it makes no sense for the Chiefs to sink a lot of money in there because then that defense would be bad.
Yeah, I think when you identify what your strengths are as a team, right, you have the best quarterback in football who elevates everybody. Okay, we don't have to necessarily spend a ton at wide receiver. We'll get one excellent player in Travis Kelce. Everyone else was just kind of, we'll make it work. And then on the defensive side, it's Spagnuolo. It's the scheme, right? You don't need, again, quote unquote, L'Jarius Sneed in the scheme. You need the type of player that he is. And they believe that they can get that type of play out of some of these younger guys, but not have to spend as much for it. But also, again, Chris Jones makes quarterbacks have to throw the football quicker. Their pass rush, their blitzing, all of that funnels and creates what they, again, view as either turnover-worthy plays or incompletions. That's what they value. So, and it all makes sense if you think of it kind of in that way, in my opinion.
Yeah. Final, main topic I want to get to today is special teams. Obviously, it's been a massive change. I don't think it's gone quite the way the NFL has wanted. I think you will see a lot more touchbacks, teams saying, hey, All right, I know the touchbacks are now at the 30. 10 years ago it was the 20. A couple years ago it was the 25. Now we're all the way to the 30 on touchbacks. But it's better than the alternative. It's better than kicking it to the 5 and dudes are taking it out to the 35. I believe it was Dave Tobe that tried talking about with the NFL saying, hey, it's not penalizing enough. Maybe go to the 35 on these kickoffs, on touchbacks, or else you won't get teams returning the football. And they just basically said no. I don't know your thoughts here, but I think we're going to see a lot more touchbacks than the NFL originally thought.
I think when you give an entire team an off season, specifically kickers, an entire off season to plan for this, they're going to have a few different things. And when the rule is constructed, if it lands in the landing zone and then goes into the end zone, it's still at the 20. So you're going to see a lot of kickers try to either squib it or get it into that landing zone so that it dribbles into the end zone. I think that's what we're going to see a lot of. Instead of all these kicks that we're seeing right now, they're just showing these for show to see how it works in theory. And then we're going to start to see, I think Harrison Butker did it in the first game where he got it to land in the landing zone and then it just dribbled into the end zone. Like, they can do that. Kickers are very talented. There's a reason these guys are kicking in the NFL. They're specialized. They're very good and they can practice and do all these things. So we're going to start to see some things that we have not seen in the preseason when it gets to the regular season, and they're going to do what they can to take advantage of these rules. So I don't necessarily know if this is going to create more excitement like the NFL wants. It might end up hurting the game a little bit in that sense, because you might have a bunch of kickers just messing around on kickoffs, and just maybe teams find specialized kickers that aren't like they're trying to borrow from other sports where they're just like trick shot artists specifically on kickoff, and they just start messing around and having fun with it. I don't really know, but I do think it's something that could very well result in the same kind of thing where kickers figure out exactly how to get it to land in the landing zone and then get to the end zone anyway, and we're still having the same problem we were having.
How do you think the 53-man roster is affected with the new rules, though? Because Dave Tobe talked about how he wants his guy, Nico Remigio. He goes, he's pounding the table for Nico Remigio. You ain't doing that for Kadarius Toney. But he's pounding the table for Nico Remigio, right? That's one of his guys. How much of a difference will the 53-man look like this year, the back couple roster spots, because of the new rules?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you, because at the end of the day, how much say is Dave Tobe going to have over this? Again, if we know in practice, in essence, that Harrison Butker has figured out how to make this almost null and void, right? How many other kickers do you think can make this null and void? So if you're able to do that, how much value does Nico Remigio have as a returner if he's not also contributing to offense, if other kickers are just taking this, quote unquote, what could have been an advantage away? So I don't personally know the answer to the question, because we haven't seen it in practice in a real NFL game that hasn't been just teams trying to figure out different ways of attacking this. So I still think Dave Tobe himself has a little bit more say over the return stuff than a lot of other special teams coaches. But Andy Reid is going to say, if he's not going to be able to contribute on the offense, then I'm not going to sacrifice a roster spot, specifically at wide receiver, where they have an injury and some question marks behind their first couple of guys, to someone who isn't going to contribute right now. That's my guess.
I think it's fair. I think Tobe gets a couple of his guys, and I think Remigio is one of those guys. I believe that even with the injury, I think McCole Hardman Anonymous Mango, I'm with you. Tobe usually gets his guys. I think McCole Hardman is the guy that gets the roster spot for Hollywood's injury. I think there's 7 wide receivers still. I think it's Sky Moore is making the roster. Whether we like it or not, just what I have heard, the rumblings, again, whatever you agree or disagree with, it sure sounds like Sky Moore's making it.
Based on usage, too. He's been the guy coming right off the bench with the first team for the most part. So
just something to keep in mind. But by the way, I will say Sky actually looked good in kick return. Like, he looked good.
Yeah.
Take that as you will. He's a grinder. You know, it's a guy who is trying to get better, and we're trying to see him specialize things. You know, for all the letdown that Sky Moore was last year, I'm going to root for a guy that plays hard like that, who's working on his craft. So we'll see what Sky Moore, if he makes the roster, and what he has in store this year. Final one here. I like this from Braden. This is a good one. Certainly unpredictable, but do you think the Chiefs will succeed in having more takeaways than last year, like Spags hinted at improving on? He said last year the Chiefs were 27th in takeaways. It was very surprising how the Chiefs won this Super Bowl with such a horrendous turnover margin. They were negative through the regular season. Of course, they were positive come postseason time, but they were really, really bad in the regular season. What are your thoughts here?
It's tough. I mean, I think L'Jarius Sneed was one of their best, quote unquote, ball hawking players, and L'Jarius Sneed's no longer in Kansas City. So if you take both Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson for who they are, if they're playing predominantly on the outside and Trent McDuffie's in the slot, and even if you change some things around at cornerback, the Chiefs don't have guys that typically turn the football over. Outside of Trent McDuffie, who causes fumbles. He does it the opposite way. He's like, no, I'm not going to take interceptions. We're just going to get some fumbles here. So I think asking for more turnovers is not the bad thing to do. I think you can always assume a little bit of positive regression back to the mean. But this team is not constructed to turn the football over, at least in the normal sense. It's created to create incompletions and sacks. That's what it is. That's really what it is. So if you want to think about a third down sack as a turnover, that might make you feel a little bit better when they come in 22nd and 23rd than 27th this year. I just don't see them getting a ton more interceptions, but I would love for them to prove me wrong, because it's been a little while since we've seen this team specifically create quite a few interceptions.
I think what Phantom said is really solid here. It says turnovers are too unpredictable. I want defenders that tackle well. And that, fair. Again, seemingly is the Chiefs' mantra. Javarius Ward, as good as he is, everyone can play about him not getting his head turned around. But it's because I think that he was just told, hey, just blanket your guy. Yeah. Just don't let him catch it. Don't worry about turning the ball over. Just don't let your dude catch it. That's kind of how the Chiefs have operated. I mean, even L'Jarius Sneed, as you mentioned, was one of the ball hawks. He's not your traditional ball hawk. It's not Marcus Peters. Yeah. It's done the Cowboys with Deron Bland. It's not how they, or Trayvon Diggs, right? The Chiefs are more of a bend, don't break. They're not going to gamble. Leave that to Vegas. Leave that to Nevada. They're not going to gamble. They're not. I think it's schematic. I truthfully believe that now. Again, I think they'll be better. Some of those to Nick Bolton last year. One, how much did the quarterback know that Nick Bolton was playing with that and knew he couldn't catch the rock? Versus, hey, he's in the right spot. He just couldn't catch the ball because of the cast on his hand. Right?
True.
I mean, he hit 3 or 4 that were right there, but he physically couldn't. That'd be so damn frustrating, which he talked about. Mm-hmm. So I think some of those, yes, the Chiefs come away with. But as far as interceptions, specifically trying to get more, I don't think that's part of the schematic game plan. And I will also point out, I think offensively they'll be better. They'll have fewer offensive turnovers as well. Kadarius Toney, brutal, right? Brutal. Mahomes has had better seasons.
Yeah.
For how bad the wide receivers are, take them out of the equation for 1 second here. That wasn't Mahomes' best season throwing the ball. We've seen him play better before. That's not a hot take. He was damn good last year. But we've seen him have better seasons. Again, that's not a knock on him. That's just the truth. Because he's had 50s touchdown. He's been unreal, right? So the point remains, new wide receivers who hopefully don't catch the ball and then throw it to the defender like we saw at times last year. Hell, Tyreek Hill did that one time.
Yeah.
So, again, turnovers are fluky, but I do expect a positive regression to the mean, even if the Chiefs still are in the bottom 10 of turnover margin.
Yeah, and I think that's perfectly reasonable to understand when you, like I said, you consider the construction of the defense. It's not built to do that. It is built to do certain things specifically, and there's a reason that Spags doesn't care about the run. Like that's the big thing here. It's about getting that one tackle for loss, because otherwise he would care a little bit more about defending the run to get a little bit more reasonable second and third downs. But what he wants is I'm going to get a 0 or a 1 yard loss, and then I'm coming after you. That's what I'm doing. Like, that's what he wants to do. I have Patrick Mahomes, okay? I don't care. I'm just going to do what I can to just throw body after body after body at your quarterback and figure out if you can beat me in what I'm doing behind you. Like, that's all that really matters to him.
That's a really good point. Spags gambles in a different way.
Yes, he does.
It's not cornerback Marcus Peters gambling. It's we're going to send a blitz and you have no idea where it's coming from, so that's going to fluster your quarterback into throwing the ball away. That's more or less the gambling that Spagnuolo and schematically what he tries to do. Very, very good point there. Daniel, any final thoughts? Again, you can follow Daniel on X at InHarmsWay19. You can check out all of his lovely work at RGR Football. Him and Ryan Tracy do a phenomenal job over there. He comes on the radio show a decent amount on Sports Radio 810 with myself and Jason Anderson from 10 to 2 every once in a while, which thank you. I think you came on last week. Had a lot of fun with you there. He's got a lovely daughter named Avery who it's her turn, I think, according to her, she said. Spagnuolo would like that. Spags would say, look, someone who steps up. Look, she wants it. She wants it. If Spags has had any cornerback with Avery's gumption, the cornerback room would be in a better place. But before we go here, final thoughts, Daniel.
I know this kind of took a little bit of a downturn sometimes when we're talking about some of the things that don't work out, but that's what we're here for right now. It's getting close to the cut down. You're trying to figure out the players that are going to make the roster to get to the point where you want the Chiefs to be in. They're still the best team in football. Like, at the end of the day, this team is better constructed this year than they were last year. And yes, there's tweets out there of me saying that they had the most talented wide receiver that Patrick Mahomes has ever had last year. So when you have tweets out there like that, it happens. And we all have some bad ones, and that's definitely a bad one for me. But just on point. But I think that this is a very good understanding of how you build a team, right? You get your stars, you draft well. And the Chiefs have drafted very well overall. Yes, they have some misses. Everyone has misses. Look what they did at cornerback. Yes, I know they lost L'Jarius Sneed, but these guys have played in the NFL. They'll figure it out. And Dave Merritt, who has criminally underrated every single year of his time in Kansas City, has done a fantastic job with the corners and how they've been able to churn out guys that are in the right spot and can just be what you need. You don't have to have stars. Just get the job done. So the defense is going to be top 10. You can mark that down. You can write that in pen, in my opinion, regardless of who's playing at cornerback. I think there'll be a top 10 defense. And again, I appreciate you having me on. I always love getting on radio with you and Jason and having a great time there. And you guys are just such a great presence to be around. You're always supporting everybody. So thank you very much for having me.
Oh, Daniel, what's that? It's my heart fluttering right there.
A little bit of a Grinch feel.
Again, some great points. I just think that this is, again, maybe the most complete team in the Mahomes era. Defensively, I think they take maybe a little step back. Again, not drastic, just a small one from top 3 to top 7. Maybe it's 8, whatever it is. They're going to be a really good defense. And then offensively, I think this is the most balanced attack offensively we've seen. I mean, maybe not balanced, just overall balanced. Because again, when they had Tyreek and Kareem and like, sure, offensive, but that defense was atrocious. As a full 53-man roster, top to bottom, this might be the best in the Mahomes era. They've improved drastically offensively from last year. At least we all hope. We all hope. We can all assume. And offensive line, I think they're solid. Kingsley has shown me what I needed to see. I think he can be as good this year as Donovan Smith was, which is not necessarily a knock on Donovan. He was fine. Yeah. My point is I think Kingsley will be fine this year. Overall, buy in, y'all. Yeah. I think Chiefs win the Lombardi and complete the three-peat. So I'll tell you, I'm damn excited. But Daniel, I'm Dan excited to have you. Nice. Everyone, if you want to give us a like or review, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, for being here. Always do appreciate y'all. Until next time, we are out.